December 4th is the anniversary of the birth of the most photographed Texan. Or it could be the anniversary of his birth, which was not recorded until about a year later, and it was based on the collective memory of a few folks. We will just never know. So perhaps Hondo Crouch was born on December 4th in 1915. John Crouch grew up in Hondo, Texas, just west of San Antonio. He wanted to be a swimmer, but there were no local places to practice. He got a book on swimming, stretched out on a piano bench, and started learning how to stroke. It's sort of like the accomplished basketball player who had to learn to dribble on a gravel court. By the time that John got to his first swim meet, wearing trunks and cowboy boots, he knew that he was ready, but no one else did. After he cinched a few medals, people started to take notice of the boot-wearing swimmer in the cowboy hat. Everyone wanted to know, where did he come from? Then, when he told them that he was from Hondo, Texas, he put his first Texas town on the map. The second one would come a few years later. It's also how he got the nickname, Hondo. Since it was common knowledge to the swimmers in Austin that there were no pools in Hondo, they asked, "How did you learn to swim so well?" John Hondo replied, "Well, when it rains and the wagon ruts fill with water, I practice before it drains." Hondo was full of tall tales too, as well as being a rather photogenic gent. And it seems that most older Texans have a Hondo story to tell. From my collection of Hondo stories, here is one that I recently heard. Hondo and another fellow approached the trough to discharge some of the beers that they had been enjoying. They looked down, and saw a few coins. Hondo reached in his pocket, threw in a few quarters, and then did his business. Then he reached down, and scooped them all up. Shocked, the other fellow asked, "Why did you do that?" To which Hondo said, "You don't think I would have reached down there for just 15 cents, do you?" Hondo became a swim coach in a town about 100 miles away. There was no place to purchase a beer between the two, so he purchased a ghost town called Luckenbach, where he set up a tavern in the old general store. While that was more than 50 years ago, the little Texas town thrives to this day. While Hondo never made it to the television or silver screen, he did show up on the television series Gunsmoke a few times. That is, Festus would say something akin to, "I have to ride out to see if I can catch that dad-blamed cattle rustler Hondo Crouch. That slippery no good blah blah blah." One of my mentors had the following story to tell about the second town that Hondo put on the map. When I met and photographed Hondo, as told to Colonel Alan M. Morris, a framed photo of a Texas legend was prominently displayed on the living room wall of a unique home in Wiley, Texas, just northeast of Dallas. The home, fabled in song, was designed, built, and owned by the late entrepreneur, Colonel Tom No. Tom was a physicist with a keen interest in photography, telescopes, folklore, and music, to name but a few of his eclectic interests. Colonel No hosted 278 formal concerts in that living room, with that Texas legend looking over the shoulders of singer-songwriters from across the country and around the world. You probably have heard of some of them, but that's not the point of this story. It is worth mentioning that Dave Carter played Tom's concert hall several times. Dave wrote and recorded a hit song, "The Gentle Arms of Eden." The song was inspired by a breakfast conversation Dave had with Tom the morning after the concert that had gone well into the wee hours of the morning. The name of Tom's unique house is The Gentle Arms of Eden. The subject of that photo hanging in Tom's living room was none other than Hondo Crouch. In the photo, he leans against the door of his beloved post office, general store, saloon in Luckenbach. A weathered straw cowboy hat is crowning his snow-white hair, and a red bandana is tied loosely around his neck. His eyes curled at the edges of his broad smile, framed by a neatly trimmed white mustache and beard. The softly faded fabric of his neatly pressed blue denim shirt and white t-shirt seemed to speak to his casual but refined character. Hondo was the self-appointed mayor of Luckenbach, a rancher, swim coach, and well-known folklorist from the Texas Hill Country. Tom himself took that photo of Hondo in the mid-1970s. The colonel was an avid motorcyclist, eventually logging almost 1,000,000 miles in his 62 years of riding. In those days, he always strapped his professional photography equipment to his motorcycle, because one never knows when that perfect photo might happen. One afternoon Tom found himself traveling along a famed Texas blue highway, when he saw a sign that said, Luckenbach and an arrow. This was before Luckenbach had become truly famous, before the state stopped replacing the Luckenbach signs each time one had been liberated from the post that was holding it hostage. Tom slowed, turned around, and took that little road less traveled, hoping to meet and photograph the colorful mayor of Luckenbach. Colonel No found the store easily, as it was right in the center of the town. He parked his bike in the shade of that warm day, and climbed the wooden steps to the post office, general store, saloon. As quickly as he entered, the proprietor and mayor cracked open an ice-cold bottle, and handed Tom his very first Shinerbach. After Tom savored a swig of the icy malty brew, Hondo said with a twinkle in his eye, "That'll be $1. The white-haired, older fellow was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, with something about swimming scrawled across the front of it. He might have had a whistle around his neck too. Tom couldn't exactly remember, and sometimes when he told the story to me, Hondo was sporting a whistle, and sometimes he was not. Tom had been hoping to capture a photo of the cowboy mayor of Luckenbach, but the Hondo standing before him that afternoon was the swim coach mayor of Luckenbach, who had not only just successfully swindled $1 from Tom, but had won over a lifelong Shinerbach lover. Not one to miss an opportunity, the colonel looked around and spied a young man wearing a suitable cowboy hat, and another tourist wearing a faded denim shirt. Both the hat and the shirt were a tad too small for Hondo, but Tom figured they would do. A red bandana was found to help cover the well-worn t-shirt. Hondo began to grow a bit impatient as Tom constantly repositioned the cowboy mayor, measured light levels, and recruited onlookers to hold items to reflect light to dispel shadows on Hondo's face. "What are you doing?" Hondo asked. "Most people just click a shutter and go. It's called environmental photography," explained Tom. "I'll send you some prints when I get them done." "No, you won't. Everybody says they will, but no one ever does." A month or so later, a package arrived containing a 16 by 20 print of the best of those photos, along with an 8 by 10 test print. A friend of Tom's was traveling in the hill country later that year, and he stopped at Luckenbach for a break. When he walked into the post office store, a fellow was there, across the counter from Hondo, looking at that large print, and he slapped a $100 bill down on the counter. But Hondo said, "Nope. That's my favorite picture of me, and it's not for sale. You should have been here last week though. I had a little one I sold to a fellow for $50. Colonel No and Mayor Hondo never met again, though they did speak on the phone a few times. When Hondo was in Dallas, and the call was not a long-distance one, the two would entertain each other by spinning yarns. That chance meeting long ago resulted in one of the best photos ever taken of Hondo Crouch, and Colonel Tom No can be given credit. Tom estimated that he spent at least $40,000 on Shinerbachs over the 40 years. Following that dollar, Hondo slipped into the cash box at the Luckenbach saloon after he handed Tom his very first Shinerbach. Encourage others to recognize opportunities. And if you have a Hondo story to share, let me hear from you.